Thank you so much again, and good morning to those of you who've just joined. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you again. I was just saying to those who were first through the door that it's a little bit different today. It's just me, yeah, obviously with Chris's help in terms of driving the GoToMeeting from the back. So we have just a single topic for today. And let me quickly do an introduction. I was teasing Gabby 2 weeks ago about the fact that I needed a different picture, and I see she's stolen something off a recent event that we did. So for those of you who are new to our Bits and Bolts series, I'm Stuart Clark. I look after the Africa territory, Africa as a continent. And am normally joined by Oman Sami, my colleague who's based in Switzerland and covering the DAC territory. So as I said today, a little bit quieter, just me to be able to run through what we have planned. And that's normally, as those of you who are more familiar would know, is normally 2 topics. But as it's just me, I've been actually thinking about this for a while and needed to get it up and running, and I guess was saved a little bit by Oman sharing some login details for his console, having previously, I think in the last couple of days, done a demonstration for a customer and a partner of his on our new service known as SureInsights. And SureInsights is really that analytical dashboard or framework that has recently been added to SureMDM. And so my goal of today really is to give you a very high level overview. We'll talk about how to enable it in your own partner or test customer consoles, and take you through a couple of the high points of the 4 different dashboards that are made up or that make up the SureInsights environment. And then just some brief points to remember. There are some important points about each of those that I'm going to touch, and really I'd love and I would hope that those of you who join us today leave from today's session and go and do exactly what I'm going to have done: set it up, get it up and running, and play around with it a little bit. And it's really important for us as a team, because this is, as you will see, still running in a beta format. And although it's live for our customers, we absolutely would love some feedback, and it's always helpful. And I know in my region we get lots and lots of feedback from the partners, but in other regions, please share that feedback with your account managers. It helps us to be able to make this particular environment or dashboard that we've added into something that would be, I guess, really relevant in your own environment and with the customers that you're dealing with. So let me hop out of this presentation for now. I'm going to use a couple of different screens and hop between them to hopefully give you what I have planned. And I think at the same time also just to point out to you that it's always good to have a look. I'm going to be using, obviously, this that I'm displaying right now is part of our 42 Gears user guide. But we also have, and I'm going to touch on it just now, a document that one of our colleagues, Sashita, has done for our blog environment on our website, and you'll see there's some really, really great info, and I'll spend a little bit more time on this just now. And then, as I said, obviously jumping between my console that doesn't have SureInsights set up and Oman's console that does. And so I hope a combination of those will give you a better feel of how we go about getting SureInsights up and running. So yeah, as I said, SureInsights is essentially a dashboard environment that will allow you, or potentially the customers that you're working with, to be able to take additional information and make some really intelligent decisions. And these are not meant to be on-the-fly decisions. These are meant to be decisions that we build over a period of time with some really useful information. And you'll see, as I'm showing on this screen, there are 4 main topics that are covered at this point in time by SureInsights. That is looking at application usage and the stats around that, the battery health, the battery usage, and also the data usage. And so by digging into each of those, and we'll go through them at a high level, I hope you will be able to see that a combination of many of these different bits of information can be used to make some really smart and intelligent decisions, perhaps preempting, for example, battery replacement in an environment where you maybe have hundreds, if not thousands, of devices that are being looked after within the SureMDM environment. So as a start, let me hop into my console and to be able to enable SureInsights. As a matter of interest, SureInsights is free for our customers using the enterprise tier of licensing. And that obviously covers all of our trial environments that you or potentially your customers have signed up for. So provided you have an enterprise license, you're going to move to the settings, our account settings, and then if you scroll all the way down on the left-hand side to your account management, you will recognize this if you haven't used it regularly as an area where we've shown you before the ability to be able to link to SureMDM Hub. But there is a new section over here referred to as SureInsights, and the ability to be able to enable it is a checkbox that's shown and made available. One of the things that you will see that's quite interesting, and this is an important point, is that obviously it's only supported on devices from 2752.66 onwards, so a fairly recent release of the SureMDM agent. And at least at this point in time, this only covers Android devices. It obviously will change as time goes on, but important to mention that at the same time is that this is primarily or only at this stage looking at our Android or our customers using Android devices. The second, and this is part of what you will see as I show a more real look of the dashboard in Aman's console, is that you can also look at shift-based analytics. So you would notice that as I enabled SureInsights, by default, it gave me a shift that it called default, and it extended that shift for a 24-hour period. In many circumstances, this might be perfect for the customers that you're working with, but for those who perhaps have shared devices across various shifts, this gives you the ability to be able to go and define these multiple shifts and to be able to define the start and end time of those shifts. For more information around, as we're building those analytical queries and the dashboards and the widgets, you can now start looking at those on a shift-based level. So keep that in mind. It can obviously be changed at any point in time during the configuration or at some point while you're working with a customer, but only enabling SureInsights will give you a 24-hour, what we term a shift or a default days look at what's going on, and the option to be able to add or edit or remove some of those other shifts that you perhaps have defined is perfectly possible within this account management tab. So once we've done, recommended to hit on the sync button in order to be able to get that information up and running. And then don't get a fright if you jump immediately back into your dashboarding and you notice that this information is showing blank. SureInsights, as I said, is taking a lot of information from various devices, perhaps in your case, and various points or data points that we build into these really feature-rich or data-rich widgets that are displayed. And so this information, even after enabling, is synchronized only at the end of a day. So approximately midnight for most running within this European or African time zone. You will notice that information is crunched together and provided. So enabling, do not expect to see anything for that first day. It's best to have a look after the first day for your first load of information that is being populated. So I thought I'd mention that. It caught me at the same time. So yeah, keep it in mind that this runs, as I said, after a 24-hour period. This information begins to be populated and built within your environment. So let's have a quick look also at, as I said, one of the things that is built and is there as a start is what we term 3 different widgets or grouping methods. And you'll notice that these are the same across all 4 of your dashboards. We pre-group devices by group, as in your parent-child structure that you would normally see down the left-hand side of the SureMDM console, by device model, and by OS version. And so these 3 you will see will always be at the top of that particular dashboard that you've opened. And as you drill down, you can either use those to create your filtered views or your own filtered combination of data. And you will move down, and I'll show you as we run through this. You will notice that you start seeing more detailed information and more focused widgets with queries. But those 3 will always be at the top of each of the 4 dashboards that we currently support within SureInsights. Let's have a quick look, and I'm going to hop between the blog that Toshita created and also the manual for now before we move into the console. But this would give you an example of what we're looking at in terms of application usage. And this generally would be for our customers or our partners that are looking to understand which devices, firstly, have an application running on them, and secondly, how much that app was used during, be it that shift or that 24-hour period. And although it's a little bit small, I'm sure on the screen that you're seeing right now, we'll have a look at this in more details. But remember that as I said, this is giving you a filtered view of the criteria that you've selected in our 3 main widgets, being the groups, the models, and the operating systems. And then the ability to be able to click on and summarize or group these as you continue. So I'll give you a real example of it just now. And keep in mind that what our goal is to be able to identify those unique devices that match that filtered criteria, and potentially to be able to tag those devices. And we've covered tags in some of our previous bits and bolts sessions, but the ability to be able to export a list, or to be able to tag maybe devices that you have a query or a concern about, for the validation or for future checking to work out whether those devices are the same that always perhaps are consuming a much larger amount of data, or the battery is no longer lasting as it should. So application usage being the first, and this has been really, really helpful for a number of our customers. Battery health, again, keep in mind that batteries from factory have different capacity. So you will see that we display the current capacity as well as the factory battery capacity. And this is perhaps a good example, this little graph that's being shown at the moment. There would be no point, at least in my opinion, and I'm sure most of you would agree, in comparing the battery health of devices that perhaps have a 2000 milliamp hour battery versus a 1000 milliamp hour battery. Those are going to give you different values. Those are going to be at different capacities or charge for various what we would call sort of analysis or checkpoints. And an example that you would see as I scroll down a little bit further is to be able to take a certain number of devices and look at their battery health at a particular time. So charge level, if we knew that we had a shift that began at 8 a.m. as an example, we could have a look at a slotted or a fixed charge level of various devices, normally with the same capacity, because otherwise this is not going to be as relevant, and begin identifying devices that perhaps are no longer lasting as they should. Again, we can tag, and we can then start using some of the other criteria or some of the other widgets to identify those same devices. And interestingly, and I'm going to show you just now, I identified just in 1 or 2 of Armand's devices, one which shows up in both, this is specifically under the battery usage, but one that shows very specifically a battery that is not, I guess, performing at its original or normal operational capacity. And so I'll run through that with you a little bit later. Another important point to mention, one of the things that we are managing or viewing or monitoring is the charge cycles. But there is an important point to remember on this one. Charge cycles on devices up to Android 13 will only be recognized as those cycles having been completed during or since the enrollment of the device into SureMDM. So Android 13 and below, these will be the cycles that have been done since the device was enrolled in SureMDM. Android 14 and above, these will be the cycles that are based on the device's lifetime. Okay, so again, if you're going to be looking at different devices, different OS versions, this may give you skewed data, and it would be best to be able to keep those devices grouped or reported or filtered in a way that that gives relevant or information that makes most sense for you in that environment. So again, as I use that example as the charge level at 9 a.m., that may not suit your specific requirement. Every single one of these widgets you will see that has the ability to be changed includes a little gear or settings icon, as you'll be familiar with on most of our SureMDM consoles. And so you can go and adjust those criteria. Temperature, for example, where I live, perhaps a battery would be warmer than normal, versus somebody perhaps who's working in a European environment, or and so this would obviously be allowing you to be able to make those changes so that you're not reporting on devices that are perhaps being used in a normal summer type of environment in a particular area. Okay, let's jump to battery usage, and then I'm going to take you to the console, and we're going to have a look at these in some real data that Armand has. Again, a query that we've had from many of the partners in my region, and I'm sure in many others. How can I look at what applications application is using the most amount of battery on my particular device. And so in this case, we're reporting not only on what we call the foreground application, and that we show the 5 highest applications using the battery, but also the device screen time. For example, a device that maybe has been off for an extended period of time, or perhaps one that's been on for the full shift, are obviously going to give differences in terms of the battery usage by application. And so again, filtering these and the way that you filter them is obviously going to be the way that you get the most valuable information out of this environment. And then lastly, data usage. And we had data usage in reporting and also in some of our dynamic jobs in the past on a per device basis. Obviously, the reporting was as you selected in terms of grouping. But this really takes it to the next level. We can look at, as you'll see in this example, total data usage over a selected period of time. We look at mobile data, but mobile data in terms of standard usage and also in terms of roaming, as well as breaking those, be it mobile or Wi-Fi, into specific application usage. So you really have various ways or various data points that you can check to be able to make sure that those widgets or that information that you're analyzing or making some decisions based upon is giving you exactly what you need at that particular point in time. And as I'm scrolling down, you'll see the roaming usage is there, and then we have the Wi-Fi data usage. And so again, combination of many of these different values, we believe, and we've seen in many of our customers who are currently using this, can give you some really great high-level kind of overview, drill down in terms of the decisions that you potentially need to make as part of maintaining devices in an environment that you might be responsible for. I'm going to hop to the document that Hashida did, and please, we'll share these links, but have a look at them when you have some time. It's been done really nicely. It's given you a bit of a summary as I've just run through now. But what's super is that they've also done videos on each of these dashboards individually. So application usage, the battery health, and they're short, 2 or 3 minute videos, battery usage, and then finally the data usage. And so if you'd like to, go and have a look at those and you watch an example, a very short run through of exactly where to find it, how to enable it, and the information and the way that you can filter and correct or drill down on that information as you need. So we'll share these links as part of the recording that goes onto the YouTube channel at the same time. For those who obviously already have access to our 42 Gears website, it's available on the blog section, and it's one of the most recent. It was updated about a month ago, so you'll see it right at the top of that list. So let's jump into Armand's console. Again, just more so for a real view, and this one, I guess, is not going to be as feature-rich as what would have been great to show you and what you would have seen in some of those examples that I was scrolling through just now, because this only has a handful of devices and only a few that are actively being monitored as part of the SureInsights on this console. As I mentioned, wherever you see the gear icon, the configuration icon, I have the ability, so in this case, I'm looking at application usage. I have the ability to be able to go and select what that criteria would be. So I could choose a parent group. I have the ability to be able to go and filter specific subgroups or child groups of those if I wanted to exclude any of those. And then in this case, you'll remember I mentioned about the application usage. We can display up to 5 applications as part of these widgets or this SureInsights environment. So in this case, we've selected Astro Contacts, Calculator, and Calendar. And the reason we did those is that you will see also that the calendar hasn't been used by any of these devices, and Astro Contacts and Calculator obviously are at different values. So as we scroll down, you'll see the 3 groups that I mentioned, or the 3 widgets that I mentioned: groups, models, OS versions. I can select and click on any of those as part of my filtering. And then as I drill down a little bit further, I get the more detailed results of those criteria or those selections that I made at the top. So in this case, if I'm looking at Astro Contacts, which is shown in the blue color, you will see I have app usage being average daily screen time, which is calculated in terms of these values, as well as the total number of devices, or the average time in hours in this case, by those specific applications. Okay, and again, drilling down, and every single one of these has the ability to be able to be clicked on and filtered. Drill down again, a summary in terms of where we stand across the usage in hours based on those 2 applications that have been used, and you'll see the calendar obviously hasn't, so it doesn't appear in any of these. And then those drilled down, or those filtered individual devices that are being monitored by SureInsights. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I have the ability to be able to select these devices and assign a tag to these devices, perhaps monitoring, whatever it might be that I've chosen, or potentially to remove a tag that I had already assigned to these devices, or export a CSV if you wanted to be able to take this off into something like an Excel and work within that environment. And you'll see, I'm going to show you on some of the others where I click on those specific widgets. Let's go to battery health. Same idea, the three primary groupings or structures at the top. A view, as I said, in terms of the current capacity, the factory battery capacity, an important one, and then also the charge cycles. And remember that operating system split as to whether this is for the life or since enrollment of the device. And this is one that I was talking about a little bit earlier. I was going through obviously what I was going to be sharing, and I noticed that one of the devices had a significantly lower battery capacity, as well as one of the batteries that had or identified or reported as being too hot. And as a sort of a very quick check, you'll have a look. And in this case, obviously, we had those two devices. If I filter it to see which was the battery that was too hot, you will see that within a couple of seconds, my filters and my widgets are updated. And my selection at the bottom of my list, because now we've filtered by the too hot value, has been updated to show me just this particular battery serial number. In this case, it was T1518. Okay, I've potentially tagged or made a note of that. And interestingly enough, when I go and have a look at this one, which was the charge level at a particular time, actually, let's go to the current battery capacity. You will notice, filtered obviously based on the current battery capacity being below 50%, I go back down again and I find my exact same battery serial number, the T1518. And so in a very simple, I guess, example, because this is only one device, I hope that this gives you an example how by just looking at these widgets for a matter of minutes in preparation for this webinar, I was already able to identify a particular battery serial number that appears at a quick glance to be something that is not necessarily operating in the way that we're expecting it to be. And I can remove these filters. And as I said a little bit earlier, you'll see in this case, we were looking at charge level at 9 a.m., but I have the ability to go and make that shift specific or user or business specific in an environment that I would like. And I mentioned obviously also temperature. So hot and cold in different parts of the world obviously are going to have some differences. And in this case, we have the ability to be able to define and refine our search in terms of what is ultimately displayed in the SureInsights environment. Battery usage. Again, firstly, groupings. And again, remember, guys, that you can click and filter on these. So while I'm hopping over them right now, this may be really important for you if you have multiple groups or multiple child groups based on office location, as an example, or perhaps you're wanting to look at specific models. And in this case, maybe a Moto G34 or a TC22. I maybe want to filter those devices, looking at those that we know that have the same battery capacity, or those that we know are being used for the same function, perhaps in a distribution center or warehouse of your customer's environment. And here you would see we have the foreground battery usage of specific applications. I can drill down in any of these. As I said, I can look at the screen on time, and then I can identify the environment or those that are potentially outside of what I'm looking at in this environment. I also have the option to be able to click on view. I'm hoping this is, it's going to give me a device-specific environment. So again, I've maybe identified something that's outside of the norm. I have the ability to go and look at this specific device and view exactly what was going on in terms of those applications and the battery usage of those. And then lastly, and I know we are almost out of time, a quick view at the data usage. As I said, this one, unfortunately, the devices that are enrolled have not used mobile data. So you're going to see that those widgets are blank at the moment, but our total usage is there. Our roaming in this case, obviously, again, having not used mobile data is going to be blank, but we can have a look at Wi-Fi usage over the particular reporting period that we've defined. And again, the specific applications that have used whatever that data value was over that period of time on Wi-Fi, and we would have obviously had the same if we had used perhaps the mobile data or the roaming values in that environment. And again, as I click on any of these and filter those devices, I would have a reformatted or a refiltered environment listing devices, just those that represent the criteria that I've included in my environment. So I hope at a very, very high level that this has shown you that there's something that adds some significant value to our customers. Potentially, for those of you who are our partners, the ability to be able to upsell a customer into our enterprise tier of licensing. And you will notice, and for those of you who've been joining more regularly, that many of the new features and functions are coming for free on our enterprise tier. InLocate is a good example. SureInsights is another. So for those customers who you believe this may be of value, potentially an improvement or an increase in your license tier to enterprise is something to discuss. And remember, you can do that at any time. So have a chat to your account manager. The ability to be able to change or build a pro rata value to move from any of our licensing tiers to enterprises is perfectly available. Chris, I've hardly drawn breath. Has any questions come up while I've been doing that or not?
No questions, Stuart.
Okay, good. Thank you. Let's hope. That's perfect. Well, good, guys. Again, I would encourage you, and if nothing else, if today has just been, I guess, some encouragement in terms of getting you to take your sandbox or your trial environment or your partner test consoles, get SureInsights enabled, and start playing around with some of them. And again, please share us that feedback. It's really important for us to be able to make sure that SureInsights is valuable and that we make it as unique to your customers or your own perhaps country-specific criteria or variables as we possibly can. Wrapping up as always, if any help is needed, obviously my email was a little bit earlier, but please feel free to reach out to your account manager if you've got any questions about what I've shared. Our partner marketing team is available on partnermarketing@42years.com, and I'll take support on this email address or many other ways, including web tickets, intercom chats if that's available on your console, or give the guys a call. They're available 24/7 and are really super in terms of looking after our customers and your customers and making sure that everybody is enjoying and finding the use of 42 years or at least SureMDM in a way that makes sense. Good. Well, that's everything for today. Thank you so much again, and thank you for joining. I will see you, well, we will see you on October the 1st. I cannot believe we will already be in the last quarter of the year for those of you or for those of us that work from the January to December cutoff. But I really appreciate your time, and thank you for joining again, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.